presidency in the UN Security Council. As we immerse into midsummer, allow me to briefly update you on what we are planning for the month, week by week. Obviously, the situation in Palestine will remain in the spotlight. Unfortunately, there are no signs of fighting and bombing abating, nor that a ceasefire is anywhere near. As Russia repeatedly warned, not a single element of the most recent resolution adopted by the Council at the US initiative 2735 has been implemented, and it is still unclear what are the final parameters of the proposal and whether the parties agreed to accept it. The Council will start its deliberations with a briefing and consultations on the humanitarian situation in Gaza in the context of implementation of Resolution 2720 tomorrow morning, with Senior Humanitarian and Reconstruction Coordinator for Gaza, Sigrid Kaag, as a briefer. On July 3rd, we have a briefing on Haiti, followed by consultations. SRSG Maria Salvador will present the report by the Secretary General. No meetings are scheduled for 4th of July, thanks to our US hosts. It's their national day, neither for the 5. We will start next week with a briefing and consultations on MONUSCO on July 8th, with SRSG Bintou Keita as a briefer. Again, no official meetings so far are planned for 9th and 10th of July. 11th of July is quite a busy day in the Security Council schedule. In the morning session, we have consultations on ANFICIP, that is Cyprus, with the SRSG Colin Stewart and in the afternoon, a briefing and consultations on Colombia. We expect SRSG Carlos Ruiz Massieu to present the SG report and a representative of ex-FARC to also brief the Council. In mid-July, the Council should adopt resolutions on the mandates of BINU, which is a UN integrated office in Haiti, and the UN mission to support the Hodeida Agreement. On July 12th, we will hold a regular briefing and consultations on UNAVAS, which is the UN Office for Western Africa and Sahel, with SRSG Leonard Simao presenting the SG report. The third week of July, starting on July 15th, will be focused on our signature events. July 16th, we will host our first signature event, open debate on the maintenance of international peace and security, multilateral cooperation in the interest of a more just, democratic and sustainable world order. We envisage this meeting as a continuation of the discussions we had under the Russian presidency in April 2023. We feel that there is a high demand in the international community for a strategic discussion on the future security architecture beyond the horizon of the current crisis. We propose to discuss the parameters of a truly just world order, as well as a possible role of the UN in its establishment and maintenance. Our second signature event is the open debate on the Middle East on July 17th. We anticipate Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Tur Venezuelan, to brief the Council. I guess the topic needs no introduction. The focus of the discussion will be, as we envisage, on the continued escalation in Gaza and its disastrous consequences. Both meetings on July 16th and 17th will be chaired by Foreign Minister Lavrov. And we encourage the ministerial level participation of other delegations as well. On July 19th, we plan to hold the third signature event, a debate on cooperation between the UN and regional and sub-regional organizations in maintaining international peace and security, with the focus on the Collective Security Treaty Organization, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. These three organizations are doing a lot of useful work in Eurasian region. However, it is not always well covered at the UN. We believe it is necessary to give Council members an opportunity to receive first-hand information on the activities of these regional organizations. On July 22nd, we have a briefing and consultations on political and humanitarian aspects of the situation in Syria, with Special Envoy Geir Pedersen, an OCHA representative, briefing the Council. On July 23rd in the morning, there will be a briefing and consultations on Yemen. As usually, we expect Special Envoy Hans Grunberg, an OCHA representative, and head of mission in Hodeida, Major General Michael Berry, to brief the Council. In the afternoon of the same day, we have consultations on the UN Regional Center for Preventive Diplomacy for Central Asia with SRSG Kaha Imnadze as a briefer. On July 24th, consultations on Lebanon will take place to discuss the implementation of the Resolution 1701. This topic cannot be timelier, as the situation on the ground is really worrisome. Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Janine Henis Plaschert, will present the SG report. Hopefully we don't have anything that will make us hold a briefing on Lebanon before the scheduled time. In July, the Council should also consider the issue of car sanctions and the respective draft resolution. So as you can see, the program at the moment is not too packed, and we have some slots reserved for urgent requests and meetings that we are sure inevitably will follow. As for the informal wrap-up, the so-called Toledo formula, we are planning to do it on the last day of our presidency on July 31st. That's basically what I wanted to brief you about.
Thank you so much for the briefing. So, and first question, Valeria, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador, for this briefing on behalf of the UN Correspondent Association, and we wish you the best of luck during this month. So my question is, the US administration is holding discussions with Israel and Ukraine about the possibility of transferring aging Patriot air defense system to currently in Israel to Ukraine. Will this development have consequences on the relations between Israel and Moscow?
We are discouraging all countries that have not yet done so to provide arms for Ukraine. The destiny of the weapons that will or will not be that will be eventually exported to Ukraine from wherever, the destiny is clear. They will be destroyed as the other weapons that the West and the US are supplying Ukraine with. But I presume that the decision that might be taken on the issue may, of course, have certain political consequences.
Michelle.
Hi, Ambassador. Thank you so much for the briefing. Question for you on North Korea. Is Russia abiding by UN sanctions on North Korea? And does Russia believe that North Korea should be allowed to resume nuclear testing?
Does Russia believe?
North Korea should be allowed to resume nuclear testing.
I hope you read or heard my statement on Friday during the briefing on North Korea, and we were absolutely clear there, saying not for the first time that we're not violating the North Korea sanctions regime, and all those allegations that come out, they are not proved by material evidence. This infamous report of the panel of experts that stopped to exist. It's not even the report of the panel of experts as it was alleged by my colleagues in the Security Council during the meeting. It was a report of 3 experts that went there, experts from UK, Japan, and the Republic of Korea. And it is by itself very telling. There were not a single specialist in ballistics among them. The fragments of the debris that was provided to them, they did not make conclusive statements on it, but it was widely reported as if these were DPRK missiles. The publication of these things continued for a long time. The panel of experts was engaging, some experts from the panel of experts were engaging in stamping allegations against North Korea and its leadership, using the highly likely pretexts for it, the newspaper reports, some blurred photographs which they betrayed for the hard evidence. So when the meeting started, I said that we are absolutely clear what the purpose of the meeting was. I mean, it was the purpose of the meeting was to expose Russia and North Korea for allegedly violating the UN resolutions on DPRK. No, we are not in violating them, and we are. You know, the treaty was cited extensively. That was signed in Pyongyang. But if you read the treaty, which is in the open access, it's in the internet, you will see that all these accusations that were laid on the table to blame us, they don't stand any critics, in fact. Look, we are not in the situation of nuclear testing at the moment. We've had an imitation of nuclear test in the U.S. Recently, as you know, but we have not heard about any nuclear testing in DPRK recently.
But Ambassador, how do you explain then, if Russia is abiding by the sanctions, how do you explain the very public gift of a luxury car from your president?
This is the most gross violation of the Security Council resolution that you could cite, of course. That's what the panel of experts, in fact, was trying to immerse itself into, trying to find how many luxury bags the Korean DPRK was importing, what cars they use to drive, etc. This is I don't know the details, but this is
there was a photo of it. It was a luxury limousine, and luxury cars are banned.
With special protection. The leader of DPRK needs protection, so we provided for him.
Deja, please.
Thank you, Ambassador. First, wish you a successful month. Let me ask you some question about the presidency. In the program of work, we didn't see any meetings concerning Ukraine. Is this unspoken agreement still working in the Security Council, and will Russia raise concern or raise another meeting, maybe another meetings on Ukraine? And secondly, you mentioned that Foreign Minister Lavrov will be here. We know that in the past few times, the visa is always an issue. So far, have you encountered the visa issue, and will he be here to meet the correspondents? Thank you.
On the first question, we have a convention in the Council that we do not put meetings on Ukraine into the program. Whenever they are the EP in the program is not adopted. But any country, any member of the Security Council has the right to request for a briefing on that or another issue in the course of the presidency of the month this time in July, and we have indications that this meeting on their part will be requested, to which we will reciprocate, our mirror policy on that issue, but we are waiting for their first move. Now, the second question was about Lavrov, the press conference, and visa. So far, we are not aware of visa issues as of now. We still have time, half a month. Hopefully, we will not have to raise this question, and visas will be issued in due time. On press conference, I cannot speak for the minister, but normally you know that he is open to talking to you, and I hope this will be the same this time as well.
Caleb, please.
Caleb Maupin with RT News. My question is regarding, will Russia ask the UN Security Council to put sanctions on those parties that were involved in the recent attack on a Crimean beach with U.S.-sponsored, supplied ATACMS missiles? Do you expect there to be an investigation of that attack outside of Russia? And what do you make of the Western reaction to that terrorist attack?
I do not expect any investigation outside of Russia. Moreover, we've seen comments by the U.S. State Department and the European Commission. What struck me mostly was the comment from the European Commission, which representative said that the proof and the evidence Russia is providing are close to zero, or even below, which is, of course, a shameful statement. But the investigation is going on in Russia. Yes, that's true. Margot.
Pamela, please.
Thank you, Evgeny. Ambassador, the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, today issued a complaint against Russia on satellite, on jamming of satellite communications in 4 countries, in Ukraine, in Netherlands, France, Sweden, and Luxembourg, 5 countries. Can you explain, and that they disrupted air traffic control, children's schools, all sorts of other things. Can you explain where that is coming from and if Russia is doing this? And then also Russia apparently, and maybe you can confirm it, submitted its own complaints to ITU, but they weren't included in this report. Can you explain either of those things? Thank you.
I cannot comment on the first part of it. I have not heard of it, frankly, and I have to investigate myself what was put on the table by the ITU. On our complaint, you know that U.S. and other satellites are used in the zone of the Ukrainian conflict to provide satellite data to Ukrainians, to assist them in targeting, etc. And I think that this is at least no less a violation that that allegedly is being addressed to us. But frankly, Pamela, I don't have the answer because I haven't heard the news. I will.
Edith, please.
Margot was asking a long time.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Ambassador. That's very kind of you. Just to follow up first to Michelle's question on DPRK. So you say you're abiding by the sanctions, but would you agree that any military materials or munitions that are transferred to or from North Korea and another country would be a violation of the sanctions of the Council?
Perhaps, but that doesn't happen.
Okay, and then would Russia tell other countries to implement those sanctions resolutions? Would you still support them?
These sanctions resolutions, when they and you talk sanctions resolutions, you talk only one part of it, what is forbidden to North Korea. But you omit, and them omit, other parts of that resolution that call for the political and diplomatic solution to the crisis, that calls for the humanitarian relief. You know that Russia and China put forward a resolution on humanitarian assistance to North Korea to alleviate the suffering of the North Korean population, not just the leadership as they claim, but it was flatly rejected at a certain time, and nobody plans to follow it. So I mean, there are a lot of things in these resolutions that are being neglected, while other parts of it are being put to the limelight.
Okay, and then if I could just ask you, right now in Doha, they're having the meetings on Afghanistan with the special envoys and Madame De Carlo. How close is Russia to removing the Taliban from your list of designated terror groups, and are you getting closer to recognizing them?
Taliban is de facto authorities on Afghanistan, and we've been saying consistently that you have to recognize this fact and deal with them as such, because whether you like it or not, but this movement is running the country now, and you cannot simply ignore that. On how far we are from removing them from the sanctions list on which they are now in Russia, I cannot tell you a definite answer, but I heard some talks about it. But generally speaking, it's good that Taliban was finally invited to Doha this time, because it is impossible to solve the problems of Afghanistan behind the back of their de facto rulers. Inviting the representatives of the civil society, NGOs, the former government, which is fine, all right. But I mean, you have to deal with those people who actually run the country. What will come out of the meeting in Doha is difficult to say, because the positions, everybody wishes well to Afghanistan, but the roadmap how to do it is different from country to country, and the devil is in the details. You know that the Moscow format, which comprises most of the major players in Afghanistan, including its neighbors, is offering. These are useful talks, and this is being recognized. They are offering their ways how to pragmatically continue with the Taliban, with Afghani authorities at the moment. There are other views on the other side who prioritize the rights of the human rights in general and the rights of women and girls in particular. We also are saying that, of course, the rights of women and girls in Afghanistan should be observed, and that the government in Afghanistan should be inclusive not just by nationalities, but by the spectrum of the political I would not call them parties, but I mean the political spectrum that exists there, to represent the country fully. But the case today is that it is not the fact, and we have to accept it for the time being and continue pragmatic dealing with the current Afghani authorities.
Edith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. First, Donald Trump has said that if he is elected, he can solve the Ukraine crisis in one day.
We heard it before.
What's your reaction to that? And on a broader question, we've all seen a growing geopolitical divide between Russia, China, North Korea, the US and European and Western allies, which of course has ramifications here as well as in many other institutions. Do you see any way of closing this growing divide?
The Ukrainian crisis cannot be solved in one day. That's objective. President Putin recently said where we are in the Ukrainian crisis as of today. It could have been solved, as you are well aware, in April 2022 in Istanbul, where we were very close to an agreement. But then Western sponsors of Ukraine interfered, in particular Boris Johnson, who told the Kyiv regime to continue fighting Russia. There was a Bucha provocation that was formally the reason for them to exit the negotiations and the agreement that was 95% ready. Now Zelensky And the regime running around with his so-called peace plan, which is of course not a peace plan but a joke. They had a conference in Bürgenstock, as you know, which was a failure, and that is it is not being very much commented because it was a failure, but it is being recognized by all serious observers. President Putin speaking recently, as recent as 14th of June, said that the reality has changed, and we are ready anytime, not just to interrupt the conflict, but to come to ending it. But the reality should be taken into account, the new one that emerged during the period between April 22 and July 24. It was rejected by Kyiv and by the West, but the problem for them is that the longer this thing continues and the more difficult the situation on the ground for them will be, the realities will be changing with that as well. So if they don't want to be realistic, let them not be them. But to solve the problem on the basis of Zelensky peace formula, we will not even talk about it. We already commented on that. We gave it our assessment, and it's a non-starter. It's a non-starter how many conferences they would hold. Zelensky recently said that he will be prepared to talk to Russia through mediators. I don't know what he meant by it. He, at a certain point, as early as fall of 2022, forbade himself to negotiate with the Russian leadership. If he is expecting the change, I think that he's miscalculating. And besides, his own term has expired, and we don't know whether he is legitimate to negotiate with.
Vagner, please.
And on closing the gap?
On closing the gap. These are objective processes that happen in the world, which unfortunately US and its European, you call them allies, I would call them minions, refuse to recognize. That other centers of power are emerging, China being one of them, other places, I will not enumerate them all, and that they have to recognize this objective fact. But they are trying to retain the dominance that they enjoyed for the last 500 years, basically, and cling to it. But objective processes go in the other direction. We indeed have other centers of power emerging. We see the appetite of many countries to play a larger role in the world politics, which, by the way, is reflected even in the composition of the Security Council. You know that we have a Security Council reform process, which is a separate, standalone thing on which we could talk a long time. But the major watershed, I would say, between the positions, despite all the nuances and the composition of the groups, which are not homogenic, say, take the United for Consensus. This is cross-regional group, in fact. But despite all that, this is the fight between the old and the new. And we say that indeed the developing world, the so-called developing world, or rather global south, is in particular Africa, is underrepresented in the Security Council, while the collective West, I would call it so, is overrepresented there, which does not reflect the current state of world geopolitics. So these processes are happening. They are painful for some of them, but they will continue to shape the geopolitics for the future to come. To end, you say, this confrontation that exists, the West and the US in particular have to realize that they have to change to change not just the rhetoric, but the course towards countries like China, for example. We sit in the Security Council meetings, and every time a U.S. representative speaks, he's trying to pinch China on something, on whatever. I'm not talking about us. On us, we are usual suspects. We are used to it. But China, he attacks, or she attack every time they speak, which doesn't really help in the atmosphere between the great powers, and China doesn't like it. They are trying to limit its not just political capabilities, which is difficult, but economic ones as well, with the new sanctions, with the new UCMs. So, I mean, that's the signature event that we are planning on the 16th is basically dedicated to this thing: how to see beyond the horizon of the current crisis, what expects us, not maybe tomorrow, but in 10, 20 years, and where we will arrive, and how the system of security, which should be indivisible and should not be at the expense of the others, can be established so that every country felt itself safe and secure.
Vagner, please.
Thank you so much. I wish you also the best for your presidency. I want to follow up on Michel's questions about North Korea and nuclear testing, because frankly, I think you didn't answer it. You said there was no nuclear test. That's right, but that doesn't keep you from having a position of North Korea, if it should be allowed or not to test nuclear weapons.
I should not, I don't want to comment it, not to encourage anyone to do it, all right?
But don't you think that might sound to North Korea like an invitation?
I don't think so. I think you underestimate the thinking of the DPRK leaders. You know, they sometimes make it, they simplify it, so to say. I think that they are much more intelligent and shrewd than the West imagines it.
Denis.
Василий Алексеевич, здравствуйте. Денис Соловых, агентство ТАСС. I have a question regarding the third signature event, a debate on cooperation between the UN and regional and sub-regional organizations. You mentioned that Council members will have the opportunity to receive first-hand information. So does this indicate that we should expect high-ranking officials from these organizations to brief Security Council members? Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. We expect the heads of the secretariats of CSTO, CIS, and Shanghai Cooperation Organization to brief the Council.
Susan.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Susan Tehrani from India's WION. My question was regarding Prime Minister Modi's visit to Moscow, the first since 2015. What would be the ideal outcome for Russia after this visit, and what do you expect from this visit?
What do you mean ideal outcome? We have relations of special privileged strategic partnership with India. India is a long-time friend of Russia. We cooperate in so many areas, and I think that will be a substantive conversations on the whole range of issues that our countries cooperate on. I'm not aware what kind of documents will be the result of that visit, but I'm sure that there will be serious messages coming out of it, and I presume in the form of joint documents as well.
Can you? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate on perhaps any specifics that we can expect will be in the talks, and perhaps what you expect will be achieved?
I expect Russian-Indian relations to blossom even better.
Affirm.
Thanks, Evgeny. Hi, Ambassador. You said that you hope you won't have to convene any meeting on Lebanon before the regular one on the 24th. What did you mean by that? And could you also give us your reading of what's happening now over there? What is your analysis of the situation? And do you still believe that a war, an all-out war, could still be prevented, and how?
I wish this war could be prevented. When I said that I hope that we are in a regular meeting on Lebanon, means that nothing happens before that would necessitate to hold an emergency meeting of the Security Council on that issue. We hear belligerent rhetoric about Lebanon from the Israeli leadership, and also replies from Hezbollah saying that they are ready to resist any attempts to invade Lebanon. And this has been already for some time, and that gives a serious cause of concern, because that will be not the first, but one of the next spillovers of the crisis that was in fact originated in Gaza. In fact, it originated decades ago, but I mean the current one that originated in Gaza, but it spread already to the region, be it Yemen and the Red Sea, and now Lebanon is in the queue, and I sincerely hope that we can avoid it.
Do you imagine a scenario under which a war would not happen? Like, what steps should be taken? What can?
If sides demonstrate restraint and understanding of the consequences of that potentially dangerous development, then I hope that we can avoid it. Yes.
Vladimir.
Thank you very much. Volodymyr Ilchenko, National News Agency of Ukraine. The question is about Russian crisis and Putin's regime. Russia has endangers not only the population of Ukraine, in particular the temporarily occupied Crimea, as the gentleman mentioned, but also the inhabitants of its own territories due to the poor quality of armaments. The Russians dropped at least 38 aerial bombs and plenty of missiles on the Belgorod region of Russia over the year, the Washington Post reported. Would you like to discuss in the UN Security Council the issues of the security of the Russian population from its own armed forces?
Washington Post is the ultimate authority to me. If Washington Post says it, I cannot counter it. But I mean, this is a regular narrative we hear. Recently, we heard it from the States and the European Union, but we hear it from Ukraine and its Western sponsors that it's Russia that bombs itself. It's Russia that bombs itself. It's Russia that bombs its own regions. It's Russia that bombs the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. So whatever happens in Russia, it's her fault. I cannot comment on this statement and comments in the Washington Post. I know who provides this rhetoric and narrative. We are not on the same page about that issue.
Please.
Thank you very much. I wish best of the luck, Ambassador, for this month. My name is Sinem with Rudal Media Network. I have two questions, if you don't mind. First one, according to some news stories, there is a new dialogue has started between Syria and Turkey. So I wonder, has Russia played any role in this new dialogue? If yes, what it is. If not, what's your reaction to that? And the second question is, as you know, it's been 14 years a war continues in Syria. We see like 6 different foreign armies, and I think like 8 countries have been bombing Syria last 14 years. So I wonder, how hopeful are you about Syria, to achieve a peace there?
On the Syria-Turkish talks, I badly doubt that anything is happening. I'm not aware of it. But the Syrians said many times that they are prepared, they will be prepared to talk with Turkey when Turkey withdraws its forces out of northern Syria. And that was the condition. And nothing happened that make me think that things changed. On the end of you said about the foreign presence in Syria. Yes, indeed, there are many foreign armies there, most of them illegally. U.S., for example, that justifies its presence in Syria by Article 51 of the Charter. I wonder how Article 51 of the Charter works for the U.S. in Syria. There are two armies that were invited by the Syrian government, which is not the armies, but the military contingent. This is Russia, and Iran also was invited, who are, according to international law, are present there on the legally on the legal grounds. The Syrian conflict is not ending because the reality on the ground is not changing. The Syrian government is subject to numerous hundreds or thousands, perhaps, of sanctions, unilateral coercive measures, most of them originating in the West, of course. We've heard that Caesar Act in the US soon will be replaced by another one, Anti-Assad Regime Act, which will last till 50-something. And in these circumstances, how do you expect the normalization in Syria when it is being suffocated, in fact, by the West? You know that we are being told that UCMs do not affect the Syrian population. It's again against the regime, etc. The objective data shows quite the contrary. That the UCMs are affecting the simple, ordinary Syrian citizens who are deprived of basic necessities, who are deprived of medicine, who are deprived of medical equipment. Recently, when was it? It was mid-June, I think. We, at the initiative of the group of the Friends of the Charter, we held a debate on unilateral sanctions in the General Assembly, which our Western partners didn't like. They were saying that by introducing UCMs, they are observing the provisions of international law and make sure that they make countries implement it, which is, of course, a sly explanation. To give you an example, and that relates to Syria as well, similar cases you can find there. The Belarusian ambassador, when he spoke on the podium, he was given an example of these butterfly people. You know, people with a very rare genetic disease that you cannot touch them. You touch them and there's a hematoma there, and then that finally leads to death. So they use special plasters, which are produced only by one company in the world. And that company refused to export these plasters to Belarus because it was under sanctions. And it's not just direct UCMs, but the so-called secondary measures that the Western business is very mindful of, not to be under sanctions themselves. So this is just one example on Belarus, but the same applies to Syria and to other sanctioned countries, and that demonstrates how these measures are affecting ordinary population.
Dulce.
Thanks very much. I wanted to ask you about Afghanistan. Have you talked to the Taliban and asked them to observe women and girls' rights, human rights, for example, letting them go back to school and go to work? And how do you justify holding a debate on international peace and security when you're at war in Ukraine? And have you been invited to the U.S. 4th of July party? Thanks.
The first one was remind me.
I have to remember myself. Yeah, Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Given Russia's
Yes.
powerful position in the Security Council.
I got it.
You got it. Okay.
We are talking to Taliban. You know that we have the embassy in Kabul, and it never closed. We have our special envoy on Afghanistan, who is a very versed diplomat, which is recognized not just by us, but by the international community, Mr. Zamir Kabulov, who knows Afghanistan from north to south and east to west. Yes, we are talking to them, but they have their own ideas about it. Unfortunately, I'm not approving of that, but that's the reality we are facing with Taliban and their women's and girls' policies, which they justify by Islamic norms, which are in fact not Islamic, and which many Islamic countries are trying to explain to them, but they wouldn't listen. That's the point, and that's the problem. On the debate on multilateralism, you said when you are waging, etc. We said many times that the origin and the genesis of this crisis is much deeper than how it is being liked to be presented in the West, and we do not think that it's us who are to blame for the current state of the crisis. We were approaching a long time, for decades perhaps, and the last decade in particular. And now we're just reaping the fruits, the sour fruits, the bitter fruits of what was happening in geopolitics before the crisis started.
But why are you at war if you're going to have a meeting about international peace and security?
Look, we said many times that we didn't start that war. The war started long before. The war was encouraged by the West. They were happily watching what was happening in Donbass since 2014, without any willingness to instruct their Kiev puppets. Kiev regime puppets, I cannot call it otherwise, to implement Minsk agreements that, if implemented, could have prevented what is happening now. But then the West, what's happening now, it is fighting with Russia with the hands of the poor Ukrainians, using Ukraine as an instrument against Russia, staying aside and saying, no, we are not participating in this war, we are not involved, we are not a party to it, despite that they provide whatever ammunition, provide satellite data, despite that their instructors are directly involved in targeting of the Ukrainian ammunition on Russia. So it's the way how you look where the whole thing started, and we have a totally different opinion, at least from you, on how this thing began. 4th of July. Yes, we heard today at the breakfast of the members of the council, traditional breakfast that we hold on the first day of the presidency. Today was our turn. That everyone was invited. To what it will translate, I don't know. A card, an official invitation, or was it just an announcement? That I don't know.
Would you go?
Sorry?
Would you go?
If officially invited, I will.
Please. Yep.
Adla Massoud from the National. Going back to Lebanon, the Arab League over the weekend rescinded the designation of Hezbollah as a terrorist entity. What are your thoughts?
Could you repeat, please?
Okay, so over the weekend, the Arab League decided to reverse the Hezbollah designation as a terrorist state.
I can only comment that in Russia, Hezbollah is not designated as a terrorist organization.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Ambassador. Any progress on the talks about a prisoner release to potentially secure the release of imprisoned Wall Street journalist Evan Gershkovich.
When foreign ministry officials are being asked about this question, they reply, and I will do the same. No, I'm not aware of the details. And that is a delicate subject that is being discussed by the special services between Russia and US.
Lady over there, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Georgia Garangioti from Athens and Cyprus News Agency. UN Secretary General Special Representative for Cyprus, Mr. Colin Stewart, and Head of UNFICYP, is expected to brief you within the next few days amid the UN Secretary General Personal Envoy's ongoing efforts to find common ground between the two sides. So I would like to ask your opinion on Cyprus issue, on this effort.
You want to ask?
Your opinion on this effort, on Cyprus issue.
Special personal envoy of the Secretary General, the former Colombian Foreign Minister Olgin, was traveling to the island. She was talking to the parties, only to find that the parties are very far apart from the compromise solution that may be found. That is unfortunate, but that lasts already a certain time. We had an opportunity in 2017 in Crans-Montana, as you know, which was unfortunately lost. And since then, there was no visible, tangible progress on the Cyprus negotiations. Moreover, we see the toughening of positions on certain players. Now there's a question of extending the mandate of Olgin, but that's completely within the prerogative of the Secretary General, because she is his personal envoy, not the envoy of the Security Council, not the SRSG. Let's see. In fact, it's for him to make the decision. On Colin Stewart briefing, that will be a regular briefing by the UNFICYP that he heads on the developments on the ground, on the issues that they are facing. I do not expect anything extraordinary from this briefing.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your briefing. My name is Yu from Kyoto News Japanese Media. I have a follow-up question about DPRK, especially about the panel of experts against DPRK. About panel of experts, because panel of experts. Yeah, since the panel was expired, it has been more than 2 months. Do you have any alternative plan to the panel, or do you think Security Council doesn't need the panel more? So,
we wish the panel of experts didn't involve into politics based on encouragement of certain countries. And that was the major mistake that they made. I was commenting that in the beginning. We were, when the term of the panel of experts was expiring, we offered a way out, but the sanctions regime against DPRK is an unprecedented thing in the United Nations. It's not time-bound. It is not. It doesn't have any provisions for reviewing, and this cannot be tolerated. We need to start talking about it, because otherwise we see no incentive for DPRK to engage in when they know that whatever they do, the sanctions, the draconian sanctions regime remains. So the panel of experts, instead of trying to find ways within their mandate and expertise how to engage and encourage the talks between the major protagonists, it enjoyed itself in producing reports with really laughable things which are not at the core of the problem on the Korean Peninsula, and they also demonstrated many times their unprofessionalism, as I said during their visit in Ukraine in particular. So the group of experts, the panel of experts, was in fact doomed, and it doomed itself. It's not because we wanted it so badly to disappear. Panel of experts is an instrument of the North Korean Sanctions Committee of the Security Council. So the Sanctions Committee remains, and all the issues that were initially discussed in the panel, who produced their reports, some of them were fake, to the Sanctions Committee. The Sanctions Committee will take over the situation in the DPRK and the implementation of sanctions itself, without just the panel of experts. I think we are approaching time, no?
Yeah.
But
so
Greetings.
I do not want to deprive you of your lunch.
We already had the questions, so
what you
maybe
were
we will
saying.
give the last question to somebody else. So.
It was just a quick follow-up, though. You was talking about sanctions, they're indefinite and they should be lifted on North Korea. Does that mean Russia believes that North Korea should be allowed to pursue its nuclear weapons program and continue developing nuclear weapons?
It's not a direct link, but we think that to impose sanctions on a country which are endless is simply unfair and discouraging. So we have to think how to modify the sanctions committee, the sanctions regime on DPRK. It cannot last forever, like in any other situation. In any other situation with the sanctions regime on other countries, we eventually have an exit strategy, sooner or later, but not on North Korea, which is absolutely ununderstandable to us. So, is it? I see hands raising, but all right, let's do two more, and that's it.
Evelyn, please.
Greetings, Mr. Ambassador. Excuse me. I want to turn to Africa. We all know about the Wagner group for many years because they pillaged resources. They did a little rape on the side, and many of them came from prisoners. Now, since the chief conductor, the musician, has now been killed in a plane crash, what's happened to these people in Mali or Central African Republic? Is the Russian government supervising them? Are they behaving? Are they still there? Thank you.
I hear a narrative on pillaging resources and raping whoever comes their way from my colleagues from the Security Council, from some of my colleagues in the Security Council. For some time already, I didn't expect that from you, Evelyn. Let me be frank. Now there is no Wagner group anymore. They were disbanded. And the way these private security companies organize themselves, that's their own business. They are not organized by a state, and they are not state entities anymore.
One last question, please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I'm Shade Fitcherton from Anadolu Agency. As you also mentioned at the beginning of your meeting, the resolution that was accepted on the 10th for a ceasefire in Gaza, we can see from the unabated attacks of Israel that it's not being implemented. I just want to ask you, what can the United Nations Security Council do to enforce the implementation of this resolution? Thank you.
First of all, to demand unequivocally immediate and verifiable ceasefire, because the resolution, as it is framed and it is worded now, it doesn't provide for it. It says about the ceasefire perhaps for the first time, but very indefinitely. And the plan, the so-called 3-point plan that was presented in the resolution, it is vague, incomplete, with the lack of details, which we commented when we spoke on it. That's why we in fact abstained, because we didn't want to sign up under the resolution that the goals and the means of implementation and the time frame of implementation is completely unclear. We didn't want to give a blanket document to our colleagues to pretend the implementation in fact sabotage the process, which we see happening. Israel, despite reassurances that, as we were reassured by the US, said immediately after the resolution was adopted, in a statement by an Israeli representative, they said they will not deal with Hamas, period. So that is one thing. Now they're blaming Hamas as if Israel has agreed to, which is not the case, in fact, at least de facto. Now they're blaming Hamas that it's not coming on board, while Hamas presented its view how the resolution should be implemented. So it's this ping pong continues, but nothing happens. Nothing happens in reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.